Hi, and welcome to Mrs. PM Reads. Today we are continuing in our story, Zoo, by James Patterson and Michael Ledwidge. In our last video, which was the first video for this book, in a rather gruesome manner, the lion keeper was devoured, and two lions are now getting ready to start roaming around in Los Angeles, California. And that's where we pick it up, and we'll see how it goes. Hopefully it's not going to be too gory. All right, so this is book one, the beginning of the end, which doesn't sound too great. I'm skeptical about this, but we'll see. I'm sorry, I keep bumping the table. Some people like this kind of stuff. So let's see how it goes. Okay, book one, the beginning of the end, chapter 1. I woke up shaking. I panicked at first, thinking I was having a stroke or something else. Then I opened my eyes, relieved, as I remembered it wasn't me that was shaking. It was my apartment. Outside the wall of dusty industrial-style windows beside my bed came what sounded like a regiment of giants rhythmically striking the concrete with rifle butts in a parade drill. But it wasn't the Jolly Green Marines. I knew it was the elevated #1 Broadway local rattling to shake the dead back to life next to my new 5th floor Harlem loft apartments. Hadn't gotten used to that train yet. I winced, covered my head with a pillow. Useless. Only in New York did one have to actually pay for the privilege of sleeping beside an overpass. But I was so broke, I couldn't even afford to complain. I like that. I sat up. I couldn't even really afford to sleep. I couldn't even afford to think about money. I'd spent it all and then some. My credit was in the sewer. By that point, I was in tunnel vision mode, focusing my entire life on one desperate need: to figure things out before it was too late. Things hadn't always been so dire. Only 2 years before, not only had I lived in a non-vibrating apartment, I was actually on the PhD fast track at Columbia University. I was the golden boy in the Ecology, Evolution, and Environmental Biology department. So close to the brass ring, I could practically smell the book contracts, the cocktail parties, the cushy university appointments. But then I came into contact with the event, what others called the mistake, that changed my life. I noticed something. Something wasn't quite right. Something I couldn't let go. That's the way it happens sometimes. Life is flowing along like a fairy tale, and then you see something that you just can't categorize. Something that starts filling your every thought, your every dream, your every waking moment. At least, that's the way it happened with me. 1 minute, I was about to realize my goal of academic greatness, and the next, I was wrestling with something I couldn't stop thinking about. Something I couldn't shake, even as my world crashed around my ears. I know how nuts this sounds. Intellectual promise plus obsession plus throwing away conventional success usually ends pretty badly. It certainly did for Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, and Chris McCandless, the Into the Wild guy, who died on that bus. But I wasn't some malcontent or mystic trying to form a deep intrinsic connection with an ultimate reality. I was more like Chicken Little, an evolutionary biologist, Chicken Little, who had detected that the sky was actually falling. Except it wasn't the sky that was falling. It was worse. Biological life was falling. Animal life itself. Something very, very weird and very, very bad was happening. And I was the only voice shouting in the wilderness about it. Before I get ahead of myself, my name is Oz. My first name is Jackson, but with a last name like mine, no one uses it. Unfortunately, my father is also known as Oz, as are my mother, my three sisters, my uncles, and all my paternal cousins, which gets confusing at family reunions, but that's neither here nor there. What is here and there, everywhere, is the problem I was monitoring. The global problem I, by that point, pretty much devoted my life to trying to figure out. It sounds grandiose, I know, but I feared that if I were right, and for the first time in my life, I truly hoped I was wrong, a planetary paradigm shift was underway that was going to make global warming feel like a Sunday stroll through an organic community garden. Chapter 2. I love these short chapters. I hopped out of bed wearing a pair of wrinkled gray pajama bottoms that Air France had gifted me with on a recent flight to Paris. Shaved, showered, teeth brushed, I got back into the fancy French pajamas. Working from home has its perks. Okay, working implies that I'm making money. This was another kind of work. Anyway, they were really comfortable pajamas. Coming out of my bedroom, I retrieved another prized possession from the doorknob, my fire engine red woolen hat, which I'd acquired on a recent trip to Alaska. With my thinking cap firmly on the bottle, I got down and pumped out my daily 100 push-ups, a habit I'd picked up on yet another jaunt, a 4-year stint in the U.S. Army before college. PE complete, I headed into my shop. I flipped the surge protector switches, turned on the TV sets that I'd lined across a metal workbench in the center of the industrial style room. There were 8 of them in all. Some were nice new flat screens, but most were junkers I'd picked up diving dumpsters after the digital signal changeover. Behind them, a Gordian knot of wires connected them to cable boxes and satellite receivers, and a set of laptops and computer servers that I'd modified with the help of some electronic buddies of mine into the world's biggest, baddest DVR. As I waited for everything to boot up, I popped my first Red Bull of the day. Another number 1 train kicked up my heart rate along with a cloud of dust off the windowsills. Call me crazy, go ahead, you wouldn't be the first. But after the initial shock, I kind of like my apartment's MTA provided soundtrack. I don't know why, but from the time I was a little kid up until I received my Rhodes Scholarship, my ADD-addled brain tended to fire on all cylinders when it was surrounded by head-banging noise. Old school AC/DC, that was my bag. Metallica, Motorhead, with all the knobs and cranks to volume 11. I frowned at the lightning screams, remembering my father, a lieutenant in the FDNY, watching the evening news. After a Bronx 4 alarmer, he would come home, drop in front of the tube, and at the first commercial, After a Miller High Life or two, he would say, Oz, boy, sometimes I think this world of ours is nothing but a GD zoo. In front of me, animals began to fill the screens, lots of them, all of them behaving very badly. Fathers really do know best, I guess, because that's exactly what was happening. The world was becoming a zoo without cages. Chapter 3. Settling back into my tag sale leather rolling chair, I lifted a new legal tablet from the fresh stack on the table to my right, clicked a pen, and wrote the date. I turned up the volume on set number 4. A missing 72-year-old hunter with his 51-year-old son were found dead yesterday, said a correspondent from WPTZ in Plattsburgh in upstate New York, a good-looking brunette in a red coat. She held the microphone as though it were a glass of wine. The men were apparently killed by black bears while illegally hunting outside of Lake Placid. The camera cut to a shot of a young state trooper at a press conference. Buzz cut, lanky, country boy, uncomfortable in front of cameras. No, there was no way they could have been saved, the trooper said. He blew his P's and B's straight into the mic. Both men were long dead and partially eaten. What's still puzzling to us is how it happened. Both of these men's weapons were still loaded. He ended the report with the claim that the father and son were known poachers, fond of using an illegal hunting method known as deer dogging, using dogs to chase out and ambush deer. Back to you, Brett, the brunette said. Not good, Brett, I said as I muted set 4 and cranked up set 8. Blip, blip, blip went the green bars on the screen. On it, a news program from NDTV, a sort of English-speaking Indian version of CNN, was starting. A Carolyn Mahout was killed yesterday while he was training elephants, the middle-aged anchorman said. He had a mustache and a Bollywood swipe of hair. There was something of Clark Gable about him. Please be advised, the footage we are about to show you is graphic in nature. He wasn't kidding. I watched as an elephant, tied to a stake in a village square, stomped a little guy in front of her into the ground. Then she wrapped her trunk around the guy's legs and tossed him up in the air. The anchorman explained that the attack had occurred while the mother elephant was being separated from its baby during a training ritual known as Bhajan. I'd heard of it, also known as torture training. Bhajan is the preferred way of elephant training in rural parts of India. A baby elephant is separated from its mother and put in a cage so villagers can whack it with hot irons and sticks that have nails on the end. Oh my. The brutal beating continues to the point where either the baby elephant allows itself, to be ridden or dies. Guess Ma wasn't down with the program, dude, I said to the dying elephant trainer on the screen. But the piece de resistance was the breaking news I pulled off Fox News on set 2. The Barbie doll on TV informed me that 2 lions from the LA Zoo had not only killed their keeper and escaped, they'd also killed some guy on a nearby golf course. On the screen, half a dozen LAPD with M16s cordoned off a block lined with palm trees, people from animal control milling around behind them in white jumpsuits. The lions were last spotted in the La Brea neighborhood near Beverly Hills, chirped Megan Kelly, her vacant eyes nailed to the teleprompter. I threw down my pen. I was pissed. Skin itching, heart going like a hammer. Was everyone asleep? Under hypnosis? High? Was everybody freaking stoned? I grabbed the pen again and scribbled 3 letters on the pad, hard enough to tear the paper. HAC, with a bunch of exclamation points. Then I threw the pad of paper across the room. When will you people listen? I yelled at my wall of media. It was time for more caffeine. Chapter 4. I sat bent over in my chair for a few minutes of therapeutic seething. I listened to an uptown train blasting by my window, then a downtown one. Then I crossed the room, picked up the pad again, and went back to work. HAC, human-animal conflict. This was the theory I was working on. Basically, it was my belief that all throughout the world, animal behavior was changing. Not for the better either, not even a little. On every continent, species after species was suddenly displaying hyper-aggressive behavior toward one particular animal. The enemy was us, you and me, people, man. The facts were undeniable. From Romania to Colombia, from the Pyrenees to the Rockies, from St. Louis to Sri Lanka, there'd been an exponential increase in animal attacks on humans by wild leopards, bears, wolves, boar, all kinds of different animals, you name it. In fact, the worldwide rate of wild animal attacks in the last 4 years was double the average of the previous 50. For emphasis, I repeat, double. It wasn't just wild animals either. In Australia, injuries from dogs and cats had swelled by 20%. In Beijing, it was 34%. In Britain, nearly 4,000 people had needed hospital treatment for dog bites than in the previous year. For some reason, I hadn't pinned down yet, some kind of concerted trans-species evolutionary backlash against Homo sapiens was underway. Or, to put it in other terms, something was driving animals to go haywire, and the time to do something about it was running out quicker than the plastic wand supply at a Harry Potter convention. I know how it sounds, Wingnut City. Different species of non-human animals working in some sort of collusion against humans? It's absurd, insane, impossible. I used to think it was a big, strange coincidence, too. Just lots and lots of totally unrelated, isolated incidents. Initially, it was just a goof among my colleagues that I'd started to track the phenomenon on my tongue-in-cheek blog, Man Against Nature. I stopped laughing when I started looking at the evidence more closely. Nature actually was at war with man, and our side wasn't even noticing. The expression between the devil and the deep blue sea is a nautical one. The devil is what old sailors used to call the seam between 2 hard-to-reach planks on a ship. In order to caulk it, one had to be suspended from a plank held over the water. If you fell into the ocean, it was certain death. If you didn't caulk the plank, the ship might sink. Either way was dangerous. Either way, you were screwed. That's exactly where I was now, out on a line, suspended between bad and worse. I felt like I was out there caulking the devil, hanging above the deep blue sea. If I was wrong, I was crazy. If I was right, the world was doomed. I'd been doing my best to get the word out, but was getting nowhere. I'd maxed out all my credit cards and those of several sympathetic relatives, speaking to anyone who would listen. My trip to Paris was for the purpose of attending an animal rights conference that I'd fibbed my way into in order to get some speaking time. I only got about halfway through before I was laughed off the stage. No, people weren't getting on board in the slightest. You'd be shocked and dismayed at the amount of intellectual intolerance directed at people who favor red lumberjack hats and wrinkled pajamas. The LA Zoo thing I'd just seen was the topper. The reporter had said that the cats had been born in captivity. Why would a pair of zoo lions on one day just decide to start killing people and rampage through a city? Because there are 200 channels and nothing is on? It didn't make sense. Zoo lions don't just go berserk. There's simply no reason for them to, until now. I speed dial my press agent to try to get on Fox. As usual, I got kicked immediately into voicemail. Even she thought I was nuts, and I paid her. Not a good sign. After I recorded my latest plea to her, I decided to do the only thing I could think of. I plugged myself into my iPod and blasted some Motorhead to get some much needed mental juices flowing. Help me, Lemmy. I slurped more Red Bull and tried to think while watching some more of the world's unfunniest videos. I sat up when Attila yanked my earbuds out. Yo, Attila, I said. My roommate held out his hand for a low five. I gave it to him. Look at this craziness. Every time I think things are going to calm down, the activity doubles. Sarah won't call me back. Boy who cried wolf. I feel your pain, you know. Eon, 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 said Attila. Then he made a few panting hoots and scrambled into my lap and gave me a sloppy kiss and a hairy-armed hug. Attila, by the way, is a chimpanzee. I thought Eon was kind of an odd way to talk to your roommate, so a chimpanzee makes sense. All right, guys, we're going to stop there. So we read through chapter 4. And I still don't know how I feel about this book, but it's not quite so gory as it originally was. I hope you're enjoying it. And if you're not, I'm sorry. And there are other books that you can find on the channel. And if you're enjoying it, yay. All right, you guys. Regardless, I hope you have a wonderful day. And I will see you next time. Bye.